be speaking about logical fallacies. A fallacy is very generally an error in reasoning. This differs from a factual error, which is simply being wrong about the facts. To be more specific, a fallacy is an, quote, argument in which the premises given for the conclusion do not provide the needed degree of support. Now let's go over some common fallacies. This logical fallacy is known as an ad hominem. Here is the description. Ad hominem means against the man or against the person. The format is 1. Person A makes claim X. 2. Person B makes an attack on person A. And 3. Therefore, A's claim is false. The reason why an ad hominem of any kind is a fallacy is that the character, circumstances, or actions of a person do not, in most cases, have a bearing on the truth or falsity of the claim being made or the quality of the argument being made. For example, Bill, I believe that abortion is morally wrong. Dave, of course you would say that. You're a priest. Bill, what about the arguments I gave to support my position? Dave, those don't count. Like I said, you're a priest, so you have to say that abortion is wrong. Further, you are just a lackey to the Pope, so I can't believe what you say. Fallacy, ad hominem to quoque, aka U2 fallacy. Description: 1. Person A makes claim X. 2. Person B asserts that A's actions or past claims are inconsistent with the truth of claim X. 3. Therefore, X is false. The fact that a person makes inconsistent claims does not make any particular claim he makes false. Also, the fact that a person's claims are not consistent with his actions might indicate that the person is a hypocrite, but this does not prove his claims are false. For example, Peter, based on the arguments I have presented, it is evident that it is morally wrong to use animals for food or clothing. Bill, but you are wearing a leather jacket and you have a roast beef sandwich in your hand. How can you say that using animals for food and clothing is wrong? Fallacy, appeal to authority. Description: 1. Person A is claimed to be an authority on subject S. 2. Person A makes claim C about subject S. 3. Therefore, C is true. When a person falls prey to this fallacy, they are accepting a claim as true without there being adequate evidence to do so. More specifically, the person is accepting the claim because they erroneously believe that the person making the claim is a legitimate expert and hence that the claim is reasonable to accept. For example, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on the hit series Bimbos and Stud Muffins in the OR. You can take it from me that when you need a fast-acting, effective, and safe painkiller, there is nothing better than morphine dope 2000. That is my considered medical opinion. Fallacy, appeal to belief. Description: 1. Most people believe that a claim X is true. 2. Therefore, X is true. This line of reasoning is fallacious because the fact that many people believe a claim does not, in general, serve as evidence that the claim X is true. For example, God must exist. After all, I just saw a poll that says 85% of all Americans believe in God. Fallacy. Appeal to common practice. Description. 1. X is a common action. 2. Therefore, X is correct, moral, justified, reasonable, etc. The basic idea behind the fallacy is that the fact that most people do X is used as evidence to support the action or practice. It is a fallacy because the mere fact that most people do something does not make it correct, moral, justified, or reasonable. For example, sure, some people buy into that equality crap. However, we know that everyone pays women less than men. It's okay too. Since everyone does it, it can't really be wrong. Fallacy. Appeal to consequences of a belief. Description. 1. X is true because if people did not accept X as being true, then there will be negative consequences, or because accepting that X is true has positive consequences. 2. X is false because if people did not accept X as being false, then there will be negative consequences, or because accepting that X is false has positive consequences. 3. I wish that X were true, therefore X is true. This is known as wishful thinking. 4. I wish that X were false, therefore X is false. This is also known as wishful thinking. This line of reasoning is fallacious because the consequences of a belief have no bearing on whether the belief is true or false. For example, it can never happen to me. If I believed it could, I could never sleep soundly at night. Fallacy. Appeal to emotion. Description. 1. Favorable emotions are associated with X. 2. Therefore, X is true. This fallacy is committed when someone manipulates people's emotions in order to get them to accept a claim as being true. For example, the new Power Tangerine computer gives you the power you need. If you buy one, people will envy your power. They will look up to you and wish they were just like you. You will know the true joy of power. Tangerine power. Fallacy. Appeal to fear. Description. 1. Why is presented a claim that is intended to produce fear. 2. Therefore, claim X is true, a claim that is generally, but need not be, related to Y in some manner. This line of reasoning is fallacious because creating fear in people does not constitute evidence for a claim. For example, you must believe that God exists. After all, if you do not accept the existence of God, then you will face the horrors of hell. Fallacy. Appeal to flattery. Description. 1. Person A is flattered by person B. 2. Person B makes claim X. 3. Therefore, X is true. The basic idea behind this fallacy is that flattery is presented in the place of evidence for accepting a claim. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because flattery is not, in fact, evidence for a claim. For example, might I say that this is the best philosophy class I've ever taken? By the way, about those 2 points I need to get an A. Fallacy. appeal to novelty. Description: 1. X is new. 2. Therefore, X is correct or better. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because the novelty or newness of something does not automatically make it correct or better than something older. For example, a made-up advertisement. The Satisite 900 pump-up glow shoe. It's better because it's new. Fallacy: appeal to pity. Description: 1. P is presented with the intent to create pity. 2. Therefore, claim C is true. This line of reasoning is fallacious because pity does not serve as evidence for a claim. For example, I'm positive that my work will meet your requirements. I really need this job since my grandmother is sick. Fallacy: appeal to popularity. Description: 1. Most people approve of X, parentheses, have favorable emotions toward X, close parentheses. 2. Therefore, X is true. It is clearly fallacious to accept the approval of the majority as evidence for a claim. For example, I read the other day that most people really like the new gun control laws. I was sort of suspicious of them, but I guess if most people like them, then they must be okay. Fallacy: appeal to ridicule. Description: 1. X, which is some form of ridicule, is presented, typically directed at the claim. 2. Therefore, claim C is false. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because mocking a claim does not show that it is false. For example, sure, my worthy opponent claims that we should lower tuition, but that is just laughable. Fallacy: appeal to spite. Description: 1. Claim X is presented with the intent of generating spite. 2. Therefore, claim C is false or true. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because a feeling of spite does not count as evidence for or against a claim. For example, Bill, I think that Jane did a great job this year. I am going to nominate her for the award. Dave, have you forgotten last year? Remember that she didn't nominate you last year? Bill, you're right. I'm not going to nominate her. Fallacy: appeal to tradition. Description: 1. X is old or traditional. 2. Therefore, X is correct or better. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because the age of something does not automatically make it correct or better than something newer. For example, of course this mode of government is the best. We have had this government for over 200 years, and no one has talked about changing it in all that time. So it has to be good.
Dr. Shuka, you are the top immunization official in the United States. I just want to walk through the science on this with you. Is there any scientific evidence that vaccines cause autism?
No.
Is there any scientific evidence that vaccines cause profound mental disorders?
No, but some of the diseases we vaccinate against can.
Is there any scientific evidence that vaccines have contributed to the rise in allergies or autoimmune disorders among kids?
No.
Are there additives or preservatives in vaccines that can be toxic to kids?
No, not in the amounts that they're in vaccines.
Is there any scientific evidence that kids can develop immunity to these diseases on their own simply by eating nutritious foods or being active?
No.
How do the risks of a child responding negatively to a vaccination compare with the risks of skipping vaccinations and risking exposure to a deadly disease?
Vaccines are safe and highly effective, and it's important for parents to know they're the best way to protect their kids.
Parents should know that all of the credible scientific evidence suggests that modern vaccines are safe, modern vaccines are effective, and modern vaccines are our best chance of protecting our children from diseases that can kill them. Is that right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Did go on to be this tremendous athlete, and he did win the titles, even though it seems like he might have cheated. But still, I feel like,
you know,
I know people are going to be upset at me saying this, but who cares? I just don't care. Like, who doesn't dope in sports? I feel like
that's it right there.
Yeah,
that's it right there. First of all, can we keep it real? I mean, is there a single offensive lineman in the NFL that isn't massively on steroids, that isn't taking like a gallon of steroids every hour on the hour, right? Okay, let alone, you know, Mark McGuire with his exploding zits and Barry Bonds with his gigantic, ridiculous bubble head, right? And apparently in bicycling, they all dope. But if they all do it, okay, they all did it, and then Lance Armstrong kicked their ass. So I'm not like being judgmental in the sense that like I hate Lance Armstrong. No, this is not an emotional thing for me. I think he doped. And like Anna, I largely don't care. He still beat the other guys that were doping. I wouldn't even take away his titles.
I want people in this audience to think about what it must feel like to send off your first grader, little backpack maybe on his or her back, and then the next thing you hear is that somebody has come to that school using an automatic weapon, an AR-15, and murdered those children. Now, they are trying to prevent that from happening to any other family. And the best way to do that is to go right at the people who you talk about corporate greed. The gun manufacturers sell guns to make as much money as they can make.
Senator Sanders.